with On the Road of Recovery with JB from Cincinnati, Ohio. How are you doing today?
I'm well. And yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy that you were able to come out and talk with us and be able to share your experience. So getting started, can you describe your childhood?
I was born and raised in Shelbyville, Indiana, a little small town right outside of Indianapolis. The majority of the people in the county were white. It was just a few black families. So I went to school and was raised mainly around white people. And I thank God for that all the time. Because people say, well, I got a white friend, or I got a black friend, so I'm not prejudiced. I disagree with that. I believe unless you've lived in the conditions of the other people, you don't really know them. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we were country people. We had a farm. We had cows, chickens, coal stove, outhouses. We were country. Mm-hmm. I stayed on my grandmother's farm, who was my father's mother. And she basically raised me. And during this whole period, I didn't really have a lot of contact with my mother. It was 5 of us, and my mother would come over Christmas time and have presents for everybody but me. And it was like, I look like my mother. I have a picture on my Facebook page. I look like my mother. But because of the divorce, and I ran to my grandmother instead of her, I think that she held that against me. Mm-hmm. Well, my mother drank. Mm-hmm. And early on, coming back and forth to Cincinnati, I would come home from school and find my little brother and sister out in the yard, and my mother passed out in the bathroom. And I would go next door and have the woman, Miss Burns, call the police and the paramedics, and they would come and get my mother, and I would get beat for that by my father. So I love my father today. He gave me a hell of a work ethic, but I don't know where he got the thing of the beatings from. All of us got it except the last one. And it got sold to me to protect my little brother and sister. I used to say I did something that I didn't do, so they didn't get whooped. So I've learned how, during the period of my life, to take care of everybody else but myself. I'm still learning that at 63 years old. So I get ready to go into the military, and my mother wanted to see me. I didn't want to go, but when my father said go, you went. So I went to see my mother, and she told me that she apologized for the way she treated me, and she loved me, and she had cooked. But see, I understand now, my mother had issues. My mother was Indian, she was beautiful, she had been molested as a child, but I didn't know that then. Mm-hmm. I watched my father knock her teeth out. I watched my father put my mother's head in the toilet, and I jumped on his back. My father was violent, and my mother had been through some stuff, but I didn't think she loved me anymore. So anyway, my father blows the horn, it's time for me to go. So she tells me, no matter what happens to me, make your father proud, because my 2 older brothers got in trouble. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I was the square one, right? I leave that evening, I get to Fort Sill the next day, I get my afro cut off. And the story I'm about to tell you now, I wasn't able to tell that story without a needle in my arm until 2002. I got to Fort Sill the next day, I got my afro cut off. They called me to the chaplain's office, and my father told me to sit down. So I said, well, what happened? I thought one of my brothers got in trouble. He said, sit down. And he told me that right after I left, my mother shot herself and killed herself.
Oh my.
I couldn't tell this story without a needle in my arm for a long time. And it was like something went inside of me and pulled out everything good. I went in the military to be a military police officer. When I went back to the funeral, I was in such denial. I said her boyfriend killed her, right? I was in denial. So I get to the funeral, I get back to Fort Sill, I get drunk, I punch a drill sergeant. When he gets done beating me up, I wake up the next morning, they call me to the captain's office and they tell me, look, I didn't know my father was on the phone listening. So they tell me, you have a choice, James. We'll send you home today or you go in the infantry. So I ended up in the infantry. I went to Germany. I got honorable discharge, but while I was in Germany, we got ready to go to war in '76. It was called a police in action, and I went to get my, they put us in the gymnasium and gave us all shots with the same gun. I ended up in the hospital with viral hepatitis type unknown. When I got well, they gave me an M16 and sent me to Panama. Panama, I've seen a lot of crazy things. And when I got back, the Vietnam veterans gave me drugs and I sold them. And I got an extra $5 if I hit you in the arm. So I continued doing that. But I was hurting on the inside and I was drinking a lot. And one day in 1976, I was listening to Stevie Wonder, Isn't She Lovely? And I started crying about my mother, right? Mind you, I've never told nobody that my mother was dead because that she committed suicide, because if I tell you that, you're gonna think I'm crazy. So what I did is, I tried some of it. And when I laid back, I thought all my problems was gone. But if my soul could have talked, it would have told me, you didn't have no peace before you shot this shit. You ain't gonna have none now. I ended up with an honorable discharge, and the only reason I got that is because I could box and I was good on the basketball team. I got out, and I don't really think I don't think at that point it was as bad as I thought it was. So I came home and it was no heroin. I couldn't find a job. Honorable discharge, nobody would hire me. I had a baby on the way, and I started hustling. And I wasn't good at it. I got caught. First time offense for petty theft. They sent me to prison in 1979. And that hurt me. That hurt me bad. Because I'm watching these guys who just got out of prison, getting new charges, getting probation. So I just knew. You know, the judge told me, he said, I'm sending you to prison because you was raised right. And my father got mad, I got mad, and make a long story short, I didn't bring it with me. From 79 to 2002, I went to prison 11 times. And I went to this place called Pickway Correctional Institution, where I'm going back on the 20th to speak. I go there once or twice a year. Anyway, they sent me to prison, and a friend of mine named Otis Fulton said, look, man, come to this program because they're paying at the parole board if you go. I was on parole a long time. I went to the program. It was a therapeutic community called Oasis at Pickway Correctional Institution. And when I got there to get in the program, you had to say the hardest thing that ever hurt you in front of a group of people. So when it was my turn, I got up and I walked out, and my friend came and got me. And I talked about my mother without being high. And change started to happen. And when I was in the program, I realized I was doing to my kids what my mother had done to me. So I started working at this place called Telecell. I remember having holes in my shoes and buying shoes for my kids. I remember working, and I just kept saying, because when you leave a prison, don't nobody care if you're an addict. I mean, I was making $7 an hour, and I ended up sleeping in my car. So I could have lived with my brother. I could have lived with my sister, but I had burnt bridges, and it was time for me to step up. So I kept working, and the viral hepatitis I had in the military had turned into hepatitis C. So the VA awarded me 100% disability, but I had to take this interferon. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yes.
It messed me up.
Yes.
Right now, I'm messed up. So I took the interferon. They gave my disability in 2002, take it in 2006, and I'm sick. When I started taking that medicine, I was 215 pounds. When I got off, I was 169 pounds. I have aches and pains. I suffer from chronic pain, I was clean 10 years until I got off the interferon. And I kept going back and forth telling them something's wrong, something's wrong. I remember the night I went and used. It was February 4th, 2004. I had almost 11 years clean. But I say this all the time. Pain will take you somewhere that your pride won't allow you to go. And I know what pain is.
So when you were talking about your health problems and being able to reach out and ask for help and be able to take care of yourself, how do you not pick up?
From my experiences, when I did pick up, when I was on the pain pills that the VA gave me. I mean, I was getting pain pills from 2002 up to 2015 when I made them take me off of them. Because one, after a while, I don't care if you're an addict or not, the same medicine is not going to continue to work over a period of time. So in 2016, they put me on what's that stuff called Suboxone, right? And to me, it was like getting high all over again. So I made a decision. I say, look, I was at work. I told my boss and them what was going on. Because when you sell cars, at most car lots, you got people who get high. Because it's a lot of money. So I said, look, I'm getting ready to check in. And I went up to Chillicothe. And I've been clean since then. A lot of times I don't share my clean time because it hurts that I lost so much. And I have to keep my mind off what I lost and be grateful for what I have. You know, a lot of people ask me, how did you become so successful, right? And I tell everybody the same thing. It's not what you have lost, it's what you have left. And I had such a great work ethic that, I mean, if I got to clean toilets for a living, I'll do it instead of hustling. And doing step work, I see my patterns, you know, and sometimes I still suffer from low self-esteem. You know, my wife would tell me, you nice looking, and I still remember my mother telling me how ugly I was. I wasn't able to get past that until I started doing step work. I couldn't accept a compliment. I mean, this has not been easy, but it's been worth it.
Right.
It's been worth it. And God sees it. And God sees it.
How did you develop such amazing relationships with your family, children, significant other? How did you go about winning back trust, rebuilding trust?
It wasn't easy. But I love my kids. I love my kids. Right now I can say this, and I ain't said this in a long time. I love my life. I love my life. And I hate to see people suffer from the disease of addiction. I don't get paid to go back to prison and speak. I don't get paid to pick people up at the bus station when they come home, take them to a meeting, or buy them clothes. But God has provided for me. You know, I believe this. Everything I got right now don't belong to me. When I go to sleep tonight, I don't keep my heart beating, God does. When the day I leave here, ain't none of this stuff going with me. So why am I sitting here worrying about, when I worried about money, I couldn't get it. Whatever is meant for me, I will get. You know, my income is okay. I don't need anything. Keep a few pennies in the bank and just stay grateful.
So you seem to have a sense of peace about you. How do you do that?
I talk to God a lot. I cry to God, not because I don't trust people, but people in our very nature. Let me rephrase that. I don't put unrealistic expectations on others. For instance, if you was to reach across this table and smack the shit out of me, I'd walk out. I wouldn't hit you back. Because I know that ain't you. It's something behind you that's doing it, because it was something behind me making me shoot that stuff in my arm, drink. I remember being on Crime Stoppers in '93. They arrested me. I escaped from the hospital with a fractured hip because the police had beat me up, right? I was in UC. So I took all my pain pills. I had on a house robe and walked out of the hospital. Was back on Crime Stoppers that night. But I've done so much shit. I don't know, you know. I brought a copy of my record, but I didn't bring it in. And if you see it, you won't believe it. You wouldn't believe it. I win bets today. You ain't never been to jail? Okay. But anyway, I'm grateful.
Well, we're grateful that you came out and shared your story. Two last questions.
Go ahead.
When you talk about the trauma that you experienced, you know, from a very young age and different experiences that you've had throughout your life, how do you? So one, you've said that you're still working on things. Mm-hmm. If you could share a little bit about how you took that first step of starting to work on it, because that seems to be where people really struggle.
First and foremost, I had to face my reality. Early on in my life, I learned how to participate in the make-believe. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be anybody else but James Brown. I wanted to be Batman, Superman, Tarzan. I had to embrace everything, and it wasn't easy. I still cry and wonder why certain things happen during my life. I still question, why did my mother call me the one she didn't like and then kill herself? It hurts. And when it hurts, I had the ability to do something I never could do. I never cried about my mother until 2002. See, I have the opportunity today to cry, to call somebody, to tell my wife, I ain't feeling too good today. And that's how I get through. Because I try not to put no unrealistic expectations on myself. See, my disease tells me I ain't shit every day. I don't care what you got on, you still a dope fiend. You ain't no good and you ain't never gonna be no good, so I have to feed myself other information There's something inside of you that tells you that you're nothing. But God don't make no junk. God does not make junk. We all have to go through our trials and tribulations, just like I went through mine. But all you got to do is get around people. Find that one person you could trust, just one person, and talk to them about what's going on. Something led you to get high. None of us was born with a pipe in our mouth or a needle in our arm. Something, that same behavior that you used to start getting high, you had to learn it. But guess what? We got a program in here that guarantees you, if you work the program, you don't have to use no more. The promise is hope and freedom from active addiction. And man, if you just knew what God has blessed me with through the program of Narcotics Anonymous, AA, and a God of my understanding, because if you listened earlier, I didn't believe in God and got clean. I just don't want to see nobody go through what I went through. Just call somebody. It's a hotline that you could call. You know, I would put my number on here, but my wife would kill me because she would swear up and down I'm trying to date somebody. So I can't do that. But God has been so good to me. Boy, he's been good to me. He's been good to me. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming out today and sharing your experience and hope. It is really so much hope. You are definitely, you and your story are definitely going to help somebody.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.